What if the very people who hurt you the most are the ones who seem to love you the most? Imagine this. Someone you trust comes to you with a warm hug, a genuine smile, or a faded family photo from decades ago. They ask how you've been, their voice soft and familiar. But beneath that kindness, they quietly drain your energy. They say, "I love you," right before crossing the line again, ignoring your boundaries as if they don't exist. You let it happen, not because you're weak or naive, but because somewhere along the way, you were taught to mistake love for endurance. But here's the cold, clear truth from Stoic wisdom. Being a good person isn't the same as being a doormat. And loving unconditionally doesn't mean tolerating everything, no matter how much it hurts. There are certain behaviors, no matter who they come from, even family, that should never be accepted or ignored. In this video, we're diving deep into 5 specific behaviors you must never tolerate. Not from your partner, not from your boss, and certainly not from your family. Because as the Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you respond that matters. You are not harmed by what others do, but by what you allow to continue. If you've ever left a conversation feeling smaller, quieter, like you're disappearing from your own life, this message is for you. Let's get into it. It never starts with a loud argument. It begins with a sigh, a simple, barely noticeable sigh, a comment that seems harmless. "Why do you always do it that way?" Or "that shirt again?" At first, it's just a casual remark, maybe even a joke. Then, day by day, the criticisms stack up. A sarcastic comment here, a passive-aggressive remark there, a little more control, a little less respect. Soon, you catch yourself second-guessing everything you say or do. You hesitate before speaking. You filter your words in real time, not because you're unsure, but because someone's slowly convinced you that your natural self is somehow wrong. This isn't feedback. This is erosion. There's a profound difference between guidance and control. Constructive feedback is focused and kind. It's rooted in a desire to help you grow and become better. But constant criticism, it's vague, repetitive, always aimed at who you are instead of what you do. You hear it in their tone and it gnaws at your gut. It doesn't make you stronger, it makes you smaller. In families, it hides behind comparisons. Your cousin already bought a house. Your sister never talks back. You've heard these words before. They sting because they come from people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. Yet instead, they measure your worth against others. In relationships, criticism often wears sarcasm like a mask. "Relax, I'm just being honest. You're too sensitive." At work, it masquerades as perfectionism. "You did this, but next time, maybe don't. Good job. Still, I wish you were more like..." Here's the trap. The more familiar it becomes, the more you normalize it. You stop noticing the ache. You stop fighting the silence. And eventually, you begin editing yourself just to survive. But Stoicism teaches us this powerful lesson. What you allow, you teach. When you permit someone to erode your worth in small doses, day after day, you are silently handing them permission to keep doing it. And that permission costs you your peace, your confidence, and ultimately, your sense of self. So ask yourself, are you really tolerating these behaviors because you care, or because you were conditioned to confuse love with endurance? Because there is a boundary, and it's yours to draw. Building on what we just discussed about recognizing when someone is quietly eroding your sense of self, it's crucial to understand the Stoic wisdom that helps us reclaim our power. Epictetus once said, "No one can harm you without your consent." Think about that for a moment. Criticism aimed at tearing down your dignity isn't simply feedback or helpful advice. It's a form of subtle domination, a quiet control that seeps in without shouting. But how do you respond when this happens? How do you protect your inner peace when the attack is invisible, yet deeply felt? The answer begins with awareness. It starts by recognizing the physical and emotional signals your body sends. That tightness in your chest, the exhaustion you feel after a single conversation, the way your posture shrinks almost unconsciously, as if trying to disappear. These reactions aren't overblown. They are your soul's alarm system telling you something isn't right. You don't need to scream, argue, or justify yourself. Sometimes the most powerful response is drawing a clear boundary, calmly, firmly, and with absolute clarity. Because the longer you tolerate ongoing criticism that chips away at your sense of worth, the more you lose touch with your inner voice. And if you lose that voice, you lose your internal compass, the one that guides your decisions, your values, your life. So don't mistake endurance for wisdom. Don't confuse politeness for peace. Healing often begins with a simple sentence, spoken calmly but firmly. That felt like criticism, not care. Say it once, then step back. Observe who respects your boundary and who continues to push, control, or manipulate. This cycle often starts small and seemingly harmless. A late-night call you didn't ask for, an unsolicited opinion about your personal life, someone borrowing your time or energy without ever checking in first. At first, you brush it off, telling yourself it's not worth the trouble. But deep inside, a quiet voice whispers, "This isn't okay." You silence that voice because it's your parent, your sibling, or someone who claims to love you. But here's the painful truth. Love without respect is possession. If someone refuses to honor your boundaries, they're not loving you. They're managing you. Let me share a story. I once knew a man whose mother showed up at his home unannounced every week. She even had a key. She would walk in, rearrange his belongings, comment on his groceries, and open his mail. When he finally asked her to call before visiting, she laughed and said, "I'm your mother. I don't need permission." That sentence haunted him for years, not because it was shouted, but because it revealed everything. It exposed how she saw him, not as a separate human being with his own life, but as an extension of herself. This is the essence of boundary violation. It's not always bold or loud. Often it's subtle patterns that say, "What matters to you doesn't matter to me." And the more you accept that, the more you forget something essential. Your time, your space, and your emotional energy belong to you. Some people cross boundaries because they simply never learned where those boundaries exist. They were raised in homes where love meant constant access, where privacy felt like rejection and closeness was used as a form of control. Others, though, they know exactly what they're doing. They don't just storm through your limits, they test them. They lean in just enough to see how much you'll tolerate. They'll apologize just enough to keep you hooked, just enough to make you doubt yourself. They twist your empathy into a weapon, turning it into guilt until you become a yes machine. Have you ever felt that? Like no matter how many times you say yes, it's never quite enough. And the moment you finally say no, suddenly you're the changed one. That's exactly what they want you to feel. Because when they say, "Well, wow, you've changed," what they really mean is, "You stopped letting me control you." Stoicism teaches us a powerful truth. Boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about protecting what truly matters. Your peace, your focus, your soul. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But I'd argue it's also deeply colored by the people we allow into our lives without filters. So how do you respond when someone crosses a line? You don't waste time explaining or defending your worth. Instead, you clarify your standard. You say something simple and direct. "Please don't come over without calling first." Or, "I'm not comfortable discussing that topic," or even, I'm not available right now. No apologies, no explanations, just calm, clear boundaries. And then comes the most crucial part. You follow through, because boundaries without consequences are just polite suggestions, and not much else. If someone continues to cross the line after you've made your limits clear, you don't owe them more warnings. You owe yourself action. You limit the time you spend with them. You shift the dynamic, or if necessary, you walk away completely. Stoic strength isn't about building walls. It's about drawing lines with quiet conviction and having the discipline to stand firm by them. Because the moment you stop treating your boundaries like optional requests, you teach others how to truly love you, not through guilt, not through obligation, but through respect. Some wounds don't bleed. They don't leave bruises or scars others can see, but they're there, lingering beneath the surface. They show up in the way you question your own memories, in the way you second-guess your feelings, in the way you start a sentence with, "Maybe I'm just being too sensitive," even though deep down, you know you're not. This is the dangerous power of gaslighting, one of the most insidious forms of manipulation. It doesn't attack from the outside, it dismantles you from within. Gaslighting often begins with small contradictions. "I never said that." "You're imagining things." "Don't be so dramatic." After conversations like these, you walk away feeling unsettled, like you lost an argument you didn't even know you were fighting, like your brain has been rewired but you can't explain how. And over time, you start to question your own reality. You ask yourself, was I really wrong? Maybe I'm too emotional. Maybe I'm the problem. But here's the truth. You are not the problem. You are being played. Gaslighting is never a misunderstanding. It's a calculated strategy, a deliberate way to turn your clarity into confusion, your confidence into doubt, and your voice into silence. The person who uses gaslighting doesn't want honest communication. They want control. And when you start keeping score in your head, trying to prove your truth to yourself rather than standing firm in it, they win. When your truth becomes negotiable, when your reality becomes a courtroom where your words are judged and dismissed, that's when the manipulation has taken hold. But remember this, you hold the power to refuse that narrative. You can reclaim your reality by trusting your own perception and refusing to let others rewrite your story. The Stoic truth is simple but powerful. Your mind is your fortress. No one, no matter how charming, how close, or how subtle, has the right to invade it without your permission. Epictetus reminded us, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. Now, this doesn't mean you're to blame for their abuse. Far from it. What it means is that your power begins the moment you refuse to let others dictate your reality. So what can you do? You stop debating with a gaslighter. They don't want the truth. They crave control. Instead of trying to argue or convince them, shift your focus to observation. Start writing things down. Track their words. Note your reactions. Not to plot revenge, but to gain clarity. This act of documenting becomes a lifeline, a way to hold on to your truth when everything around you feels distorted. Then reach out, talk to someone outside this toxic dynamic. Find a trusted friend or mentor who will say, "No, you're not crazy, that really happened." That moment when someone validates your memory is where real healing begins. It's like stepping into the light after a long, confusing fog. Next, you draw a line. This is not a threat or a long lecture. It's a boundary calm and firm, paired with clear consequences. If the pattern repeats, you don't need to shout or plead. You simply step back, detach, reclaim your mind. Because gaslighting doesn't steal your power all at once. It sneaks in slowly, piece by piece, until one day you stop recognizing the person in the mirror. But today, you see it, you feel it, and from this moment forward, you refuse to betray your own mind just to keep someone else comfortable. This is not weakness, it's wisdom. When you start trusting yourself again, you become untouchable by manipulators. There's a moment you never forget. Someone looks you in the eye and lies. Not a careless slip, not a harmless white lie, but a calculated distortion of the truth. And something inside shatters. Not just your trust in them, but your trust in yourself. Because if they can lie that easily, you start doubting everything. What else have I missed? Was any of it real? Dishonesty rarely shows itself in one big, obvious betrayal. No, it creeps in like drops of water wearing down stone. A skipped detail here, a story that changes there, a forgotten promise. At first, you give them the benefit of the doubt, but soon you find yourself collecting red flags like souvenirs until you realize you've been building your relationship on shifting sand. Stoicism draws a clear, uncompromising line here. Seneca wrote, "Truth is the first lesson of friendship. Without truth, there is no relationship, only performance, only illusion." People often say they lie to protect your feelings, but what they really protect is their convenience. They lie because telling the truth would cost them effort, accountability, or the image they've so carefully crafted. Let's be clear, dishonesty wears many masks. There's omission, what they deliberately choose not to say. There's minimization. It's not a big deal. There's deflection. Why are you always so sensitive? Each one chips away at your reality, making you question what's true. Have you ever noticed how these small lies and half-truths pile up until they form a wall, trapping you in confusion and doubt? Stoicism teaches us that this is the moment to stand firm, to hold fast to your truth, to your clarity, and to your peace. Because when you refuse to tolerate deception, you don't just protect yourself, you teach others how to treat you. You teach them that respect is non-negotiable. And remember, your mind is your fortress. Guard it fiercely. No one gets to decide your reality but you. Have you ever felt like you're standing on shaky ground, as if every step could cause you to fall? When lies surround you repeatedly, you start doubting your own memories, questioning yourself, and worst of all, losing faith in your own judgment. This isn't just emotional, it's neurological. Studies show that constant exposure to deception gradually weakens your brain's trust in how you perceive reality. That's not love, that's silent sabotage. So what does a Stoic do when faced with dishonesty? First, stop listening only to words. Watch their actions. People can lie with words, but the truth always slips through behavior. Second, stop trying to fix them. Their dishonesty is not your burden. You don't need another talk, you need a decision. Third, reclaim your clarity. Write down the contradictions, anchor yourself back to your truth. Let the silence between you grow, not out of anger, but out of respect for your own peace. Because here's the harsh truth. When someone repeatedly lies to you, they're silently telling you that your trust is disposable, your peace is negotiable, and your clarity is optional. Your response must be final, not anymore. Sometimes it starts with a smile, a laugh, a joke. Maybe you laugh along, maybe you force a grin, but something tightens in your chest. Something deep inside says, "That wasn't funny." That's when you realize the joke wasn't accidental. It was disrespect disguised as humor. This kind of humor is one of the most socially accepted forms of emotional abuse. It sneaks under the radar, doesn't shout, just snickers. And if you flinch, they say you're too sensitive. Sound familiar? You're not overreacting, you're being baited. I remember a woman who said, "It wasn't the insult that finally broke me. It was realizing I'd spent 20 years laughing at my own humiliation just to keep the peace." Let that sink in. Here's the trick. People who hide cruelty behind jokes know exactly what they're doing. They study your insecurities, then shape their humor to target them. Carefully, consistently. I was just being honest. Come on, don't be dramatic if you can't take a joke. But let me ask you, if the joke only lands one way, and the only one laughing is the one holding the knife? Is that humor? Number, that's domination in disguise. The Stoics had a very different idea about how words should be used. Marcus Aurelius said, "Let your words be few and well chosen, like a physician's knife used to heal, not to wound." So, let's be clear. Brutal honesty isn't a virtue. It's a mask for emotional laziness. Real honesty is courageous, but also kind. It doesn't mock. It doesn't humiliate. It builds, even when it's uncomfortable. So, how do you respond when the joke cuts deeper than the surface? Picking up from where we left off with those cutting jokes disguised as humor, now is the moment to stop laughing. You no longer need to validate cruelty with your silence. There's no need to argue, explain, or justify yourself. You can simply say, "That felt disrespectful," and then let that discomfort land where it truly belongs, with them. Because here's the Stoic truth. You owe no one your tolerance for disrespect, not even family. In fact, especially if it's family, you shouldn't tolerate it. If someone consistently hides poison in their punchlines, you don't have to sip it just to keep the peace. You are not the overly sensitive one. You are not the difficult one. You are the person who has finally had enough. And that is not weakness. That is strength cloaked in dignity. We've just walked through 5 behaviors that can quietly erode your spirit. Constant criticism, boundary violations, emotional manipulation, chronic dishonesty, and disrespect disguised as jokes. None of these leave visible bruises, but all of them cause deep damage. The most dangerous part? They often come from those we trust the most. A partner who says they love you, but slowly chips away at your self-worth. A family member who weaponizes guilt and calls it care. A friend who uses your silence as permission to keep crossing the line. But here's a hard truth many shy away from. What you tolerate, you teach. Every time you say nothing, every time you choose peace over your own voice, you are teaching them that your boundaries are optional. But not anymore, because now you know better. Stoicism isn't about being cold or passive. It's not about swallowing pain or pretending nothing affects you. It's about clarity. It's about agency. It's about knowing exactly where your peace ends and someone else's chaos begins. Marcus Aurelius didn't teach us to endure everything. He taught us to see things as they are and act accordingly. That means you get to choose who gets access to your energy, who earns a seat at your table, and who no longer qualifies to speak into your life. You don't need permission to protect your peace. You need courage. So here's your next step. Start with one line, one boundary, one truth you've been holding back. Maybe it's finally saying, "I don't find that funny," or that's not okay with me anymore. Maybe it's deciding that silence is no longer a survival tactic, but the sound of your self-respect returning. Whatever it is, let it be real. Because when you stop tolerating what hurts you, you start building a life that honors you. And in that space, you don't just survive, you rise. If this video resonated with you, leave a comment, share your story. Someone out there needs to know they're not alone. Like this video if you felt seen. Subscribe to Stoic Fantastic for more insights that protect your peace, sharpen your mind, and strengthen your spirit. And remember, this isn't about becoming harder, it's about becoming wiser, because you were never meant to be everyone's emotional punching bag. You were meant to stand tall, speak truth, and draw your line with love, with calm, and with power.